Hello and welcome back. Hope you enjoyed the last session by the World Chef Health Organization on animal husbandry. Now we're changing the topic a little bit. We're welcoming the Senior Global Animal Protein Analyst from Rabobank International, Nandirk Mulder, who's going to join us from Utrecht, and he's going to talk about the global poultry market outlook. After a difficult year of COVID-19 ASF, there's a lot of uncertainty in this market. So he'll advise on the best steps for the industry to take in order to avoid adverse challenges. Thank you so much. Enjoy.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Let me upload the presentation. So welcome. Thank you all for joining this event. Let me introduce in short myself and Rabobank a bit. For the ones who don't know Rabobank is one of the leading worldwide food and agri banks. Actually, we have two focuses. In the Netherlands, we are the leading retail and wholesale bank. And from our roots, we have a strong tradition with agriculture. In the Netherlands, we have around 80% market share in farming, and we are actually founded by farmers. So there is always a strong linkage with food and agri. Now, this was also our base for our international expansion, which we started 25 years ago, and we are now purely focused internationally on food and agri business, which makes us, I think, quite unique. We think that knowledge is an important part of that story. So the bank has invested in a team of 80 analysts worldwide, focusing on the animal protein sector, about sharing knowledge with the industry. My focus is on global animal protein, with a special focus also on poultry. So I work a lot with our international clients, and we also write a lot of reports about industry events and developments. So and that's also, I think, the background for the session today. So I've been asked to talk about meeting future demand for poultry and protein markets. So really looking into the long-term outlook for poultry and protein, and with a little focus, of course, on Asia, because we are now in Asia, and this is definitely one of the areas where we see the most bullish market circumstances, and also the biggest changes, I would say, in the next decade. So I will give you, in a nutshell, an overview of what we expect, how markets will change, how is this impacting the value chain and production of poultry and protein. So let me move on to the next slide. So to give you a little bit perspective on outlook for protein markets, this is actually the development that we expect for the next decade. And you all know, of course, that the COVID, but also ASF and the current very bullish global grains and oilseed market have big impact on the market. So I think we also usually talk a lot about these topics. It's really disruptive, big impact on the industry, and we expect there to be 3 stages. So the disruption, like we had last year, channel shifting, food service to retail, wet markets, supply chain issues, health issues at supply chains, but also a lot of volatility in input prices, like we see now also in grain markets. This year, a sort of road to recovery. We see definitely at the moment in a lot of markets higher prices than we had last year. So there is already some signs of recovery, and we expect that gradually will move through in a still challenging context with these high feed prices, the volatility that we have, the ups and downs with with the lockdowns, but with the vaccination moving on in a lot of countries actually, and a lot of control also in Asian markets because of a relative strong government strategy in controlling the spread of the disease. We expect later the year some further improvement. For this presentation, the focus is going to be really on the long term, the post-COVID-19 era, and that's what we think post-2022. So that's the focus of this presentation. So if you look into that post-COVID-19 reality, we think that a lot of things will change, and we identified 6 major developments that we think will change the business. First of all, poultry markets will keep growing and probably in the leading position there in the context of pork recovery, especially in Asia. Countries like China, Vietnam, Philippines have been heavily impacted. But even in that context, where that pork industry will probably recover in 3-4 years from now, poultry is still going to be the winning protein. Also in the context of rising share of alternative proteins, I will touch a bit later in the presentation on that as well. We think that distribution will change fundamentally. Online distribution is really booming. Was already happening, accelerated in COVID years. Remote working is going to stay for white-collar workers. Social sustainability issues are definitely going to influence more global business models. So that is going to have impact on markets. We talk about that as well. We will expect that in line with these distribution, social changes, also value chains will change. They will become a lot more digital, coordinated, smart, and integrated. If you look to supply, a lot of the supply will come from local markets, and we see even a shift from global to local. So that will mean actually that a lot of the growth that you're going to see in your markets will come from local production, which is of course a good thing for investors. It gives opportunities to invest, and that will also lead that the business will become a lot more international. So this is quite a lot of change that you are probably going to see in the next decade in the business. So if you look a little bit from a more macro perspective to global markets, we think that animal protein demand will keep growing in the next decade. So we expect that demand for protein will grow by 20%, but with differences between species. And you can see here this figure that poultry is very much in the lead with 25% growth. Expected over this period. So together with eggs and seafood, it's going to be the fastest growing protein in the industry. And especially these products, I would say they are of high preference also in the Asian markets. So why do we have this growth? Population growth, income growth, and also changing preferences. And I think that from that perspective, also changing preferences, poultry, but also fish is very well positioned in this period of reference. So looking a little bit back there as well, and looking into the real strength of the different proteins, a big thing here as well, beside these macro factors I just mentioned, is price. Chicken and eggs are the lowest priced proteins. So left-hand side, cost of production. So you see quite significant differences in cost of production between different proteins. So for the countries where really price matters, the lower income countries as well, chicken and eggs is a very good source. But also if you look to more social challenges that we have with carbon footprint, the climate ambitions, Paris, the footprint of poultry and eggs is also relatively low. If you look at the right-hand side, you can see that the carbon footprint of poultry and eggs is a lot lower than some of the other proteins, including actually a plant-based burger. So I think this is definitely a factor which will become more important in the future. So looking a little bit deeper into the region and also in shifting a bit from volume to value, if you look to the development of markets worldwide, we see change depending on level of economic development, and also the structure of markets. It can be very different, like you know, and that of course impacts also how you are as a business position your business or products into these stages. So usually it starts low income with a high share of live bird markets. I think in some countries it's 80-90% of the market. Later, if the market reaches a certain income level, we see that people have more money to spend. They shift more from plant-based to animal protein usually, and from live to meat, processed meat. So usually that second stage where a lot of countries in South Asia are, is very bullish, because you have volume growth, more consumption, but also value growth, modern distribution, processed meat, all these products, they come together. So very bullish period of time. Later on, you see that, that consumption has reached a high level, and the social element is going to be more important. So if you are now discussing the outlook of the industry in the US or Europe, it's a lot about talking about social elements, about slower growing, about antibiotic free. So all these issues become much more important, and the growth of the business is still there. Chicken is also growing in Europe and the US, but at a lower pace. So if you look then into the differences between countries, we can say that 85% of the growth in global markets is in emerging markets, 55% is in Asia. And if you look to the different levels, so what we did here, we mapped the expected growth levels for the coming years. And you can see that the mature markets have relative slow growth, so like EU, US, Japan, even China. So you're talking about 1%. But the countries that are in that second stage of economic development have huge growth, actually. So that's very bullish. So if you look into Philippines, Indonesia, Vietnam, but also some of the Middle Eastern countries like Saudi Arabia, the Gulf states, Central Asia, India, Pakistan, very bullish conditions. So growth is somewhere between 4, 6, 7, 8% per year, actually. So, and that also links to left-hand side to modernization. So together with the shift to a more developed status of the economy, we see also a modernization of the industry. So that's another factor which definitely changes in this context. So, and then, of course, the other important topic, what is very relevant and is really in, I think, top focus of the media, but also of the industry, is alternative proteins. Alternative proteins is growing very fast, and we see this as a very bullish industry, especially in Western markets, like you can see left-hand side. Western Europe, North America, double-digit growth of this business. But we have to say it comes from a relative low base. So if you look globally, you're talking about less than 1% of global protein market. So it comes from a very low base. If you look and you add also some of the Asian traditional products into this category, like the tofu-based products, you're talking about a CAGR of 4%. But in the emerged market is much faster, like you can see here, actually. And there's a lot of focus here from new investors. So a few pure play players started as a sort of startup business, like Beyond Meat, Just in the egg sector. We see branded companies investing in this field. You see animal protein companies investing, but also we see the rise of private labels in this business. So it's there, and it's something to watch. And I would say, as an investor, it's also probably something you can add to your category, because, you know, these products are sold in exactly the same category where you traditionally sell your products. And it's probably also a way to expand your portfolio a bit. So I believe that the animal protein companies investing in this field, I think that makes a lot of sense in doing that. So this is probably something what you're also going to see more in Asia in the coming years. So moving back to the market story for Asia, if you look for the next 10 years, so 2010, 2030, we expect the Asian markets to grow by 80 million tons. And we split it here in a few regions, and you can see that for sure Middle East and Southeast Asia are probably the most bullish one. So both regions, you talk about 4.6 million tons out of 80 million tons. So that is almost, that's more than the size of the growth that we expect in China in this period. So, and this is a lot because of their relative fast growth in CAGR for this region. So this is definitely, of course, an important investment consideration. We expect that the growth will be supplied from local business and even probably a little bit more than the growth in demand. So it will lead to more investments in greenfield. You can expect there also further modernization of the business, focus on value added and internationalization. But it's for sure for investors who are in these regions, I would say it's an attractive opportunity to supply in the longer term. So moving ahead, so talking a little bit about supply, so that is an interesting opportunity. If you look globally, an interesting change that we have seen over the last years is that nowadays, since 2012, if you look to global poultry markets, the growth of local production, supplying local markets, has been growing faster than trade. And that was never the case before. So it looks that the business is shifting more from global to local, and that's probably a bit in line with some food security strategies in international markets in major importing countries in Eastern Europe, like Russia, Ukraine, but also in the Middle East and some Asian countries. So we definitely see that the growth in local production is faster than trade. Trade is still growing, still attractive, but if you really want to access global markets, probably you have to invest more in local markets. So it's a very strategic element for global investors that I think what will determine also investment flows for the future. So another factor here, and this is also a reference to Asia, is that we have a lot of consolidation in global trade. So you can see left-hand side the shares of different countries in different cuts of trade for poultry. The three categories at the left-hand side that are the more raw, fresh, chilled, frozen categories. But the most interesting one is the right-hand side, processed meat. You're talking about products that are sold in average by $4,000 per ton. So really high value. And this is traditionally where the Asian countries have a leading export position. So you're talking here about the industry, the processed meat industry of Thailand and China. So this market is probably relative focused on a few countries, and it's not growing fast, but it's very attractive because of the high price. And if we look to this market, we expect that probably it's highly concentrated. Two countries dominate with a small position of Brazil as well. But we expect opportunities for newcomers, and I have big expectations for Vietnam, where I believe there is a big ambition here. Current investment projects are focusing on this category, and it could help the Vietnamese industry to set probably a next step in their development. So these global context with the shift also from global to local is also going to be a major driver for internationalization. So we expect in the period of reference until 2030 that internationalization will accelerate. So a lot of the Western companies, they will look into the Asian region because of getting better access to growth. And we've seen quite a few investments over the years in this region, and that's something that will continue. on the other hand, you can also expect that the Asian companies are going to invest more in countries in the Americas or in Europe, I would say. And that also happened. So you go into a double or a two-way street of investments, and that will create a much more international industry in the future, actually. And beside that access to local market, it's synergy in trade, export platforms, maybe the Vietnam, Thailand, China, value-added opportunity. You know, all these factors, they are supportive for doing more international investments in this business. So moving a little bit further into the market side and looking into Asia, there will be a lot of change, and there are big differences in market structure between countries in Asia. We have traditionally in the Southeast Asian countries a high share of live bird markets, left-hand side. Most countries, Southeast Asia, they are 50% up in share of live bird markets. But with the big expansion of modern retail, food service, like you can see right-hand side, fast growth in this segment, gradually, I'm not saying that very fast, but still gradually, it's going to shift more to retail, I would say. So especially in the urban region, also some of the health issues, I would say, disease protection will push also more into retail in the future. So there will be a shift from live bird markets to retail, which offers opportunities for investors to create more value. And if you are an investor in this business, I would say the big challenge always is to move out of bulk. So this figure gives you the triangle on how we see how you can create value in the poultry business. So usually you have to go up in this triangle from the more bulk markets, live birds, standard poultry, into premium, value-added food and branding, actually. And this is a way to create higher margin. And I would say, and I can see that happening, this is happening a lot in a lot of the South Asian countries. And probably it's the right moment because the retail at the moment is still relatively weak. So this is the moment to develop a brand in your business. So in line with that shift, that bullish, shift to more higher value, higher incomes, we see also processed and poultry growing very fast. So a lot of the faster growing markets in processed poultry are in the Asian region, but again, with big differences between countries. So the most bullish ones are the countries in Southeast Asia, Indonesia, 6% per year growth, South Korea, Philippines, 11%, India. So these are good figures, of course. So it's taking off. And these products, they have always a big appetite to branding. Important here as well is that I think this is also a segment where innovation matters. And one of the most obvious changes we have seen in the global poultry sector has been the US sandwich chicken war, which we have seen over the last couple of years, really pushing up poultry consumption at the moment. So we've seen that some of the big food service chains have started to compete on having the best chicken sandwich. So it started with Popeye, then Chick-fil-A reacted, Wendy's reacted, and now we see also KFC, McDonald's, Shake Shack reacting with having a top chicken sandwich in this market. And really innovation matters here, and it's really pushing up demand for consumption. So I think this sort of things are important. It shows that with innovation, with marketing, you can help your business a lot. So the other important factor of change which you have to watch, and especially for Asian companies, is the really bullish online food distribution market. So here you see blue bar is 2014-2019 CAGR, and the orange one is 2020. And you can see how fast in some countries the online food distribution, including home delivery, is growing. So you can see that this year, in COVID year, Indonesia doubled actually. And there was already a trend before. And also Vietnam doubled this year. And also before, really doubling every year actually. So this is really a bullish environment for the business, and this links of course with social media. If you travel in Asia, I think everybody is ordering food with smartphones actually. So it's really changing, and this is leading worldwide, I would say. So you can see also some international markets also there. Now, this Corona year, a lot of growth, but Asia, in my view, is here in the lead, and that will have a lot of impact on how protein and poultry markets will be organized in the future. I would say another change related to COVID-19 is remote working, especially for white-collar workers. This is probably something that will stay for quite a bit. So this also will impact future markets for protein. So expect in countries where remote working will stay or will become a much more important part, that to-go markets will be a bit under pressure, catering will be under pressure, lunch restaurants, after work restaurants, while we see bullish demand, food, supermarket retail, online food supply, specialist store, neighborhood markets, and probably also a higher focus on fresh. So also this, in my view, is something you have to watch and to adjust in your plans for the coming years. What we also have to watch is that social concerns are going to be more important. And so far, this was always much more a regulation-driven development done by governments, setting new standards. Companies had to meet that. But the big change over the last 5 years has been that this has become much more industry, customer driven. And I have here 3 examples where we really see that customers are changing business models actually. So it's antibiotic reduction US 2017, 2020, really driven by customers and producers as well, who are offering antibiotic free products into the market. And with cage free, it's exactly the same. And I see that also happening at the moment in Asia. Big branded companies, they are implementing cage free standard in the region actually. And you can see here in the middle the changes, the ambitions of big food service companies and food companies in going full cage free. So you can see it's a line of development, and it's driven by big names moving to different standards. And I think this is something, these are global companies. You will see that also more in Asia. Another factor which has probably also been started in the emerged market is better chicken. The slower growing chicken trend. Also here, you see more and more companies applying or committing to this new standard. So US companies, European companies, and this means that you have to use a slower growing chicken, not the standard chicken anymore, the slower growing chicken, lower density, no cages in production actually. So also this is, I would say, quite a big of change. And so far, it's very much focused on US and Europe, but you know, these are big names, global names, so it could also move further into the Asian regions in the coming years. So is this a challenge? Is this a threat for the business? I would say there is, of course, you want to supply, if you are in the chain of these companies, you want to supply and meet their standards. So from that perspective, I think sometimes you have to do it to keep your position in the value chain, but it could also be a way of branding your product. So we talked earlier about branding, and with branding, you want to produce something different than the standard in the market. And if you look to the social concern, food as a need, animal welfare friendly, environmental friendly, consumer health, buy local, I think these are also building blocks to develop a brand or a concept. So you can, of course, if you know that in a country, and I think food safety is definitely in a lot of countries still a concern, you can guarantee, or maybe with blockchain, play a little bit there, maybe change standard a bit, give it a local appetite. So that also can help you in developing a brand which is different from the mass. So I think beside, you know, the cost element, there is also an opportunity to create more value in moving in this development. But you have to realize that there is always a cost element. So if you look to cost price differences between the different concepts, the conventional versus slow growing, which is Dutch retail, which was the first one, is 20% higher. If you have outdoor range, which is Better Life, One Star, it's 45%, and if you go organic, it's much more expensive. So the reason why I think a lot of companies go to the first step is that the cost price difference is not extreme. So at the other end, there is a negative impact on footprint. So you can see at the right-hand side that there is more cost, but also more carbon footprint. So this is a little bit a challenge, I would say. So, and this also could impact some investments in the future. Moving next. Then I think so from that perspective, you can still, and that's what we have seen, most of the development to these concepts, these higher standards will be in the stage 4 countries, you know, the high developed countries, high incomes. So consumers usually can pay for it. But having said that, because of you working with global brands, you can also probably expect it more in the Asian region if you work with really the branded companies, for producers who have their own brand to differentiate, and probably also because of that these brands will give you the opportunity there to supply exporting companies as well. So you have to expect that this is going to be a little bit more important. However, the biggest part, of course, if you go into the South Asian countries, Southeast Asian countries, is still price driven. People have relative low incomes, and then still, of course, cost of production matters a lot. So if you look to this sort of technical indicators, there's still a lot of upside, I would say, in different regions. And I know within a country there are also big differences. So cost of production always important for the mass part of the market, but in the top part, maybe the urban areas as well, there is that opportunity for creating more value via concepts or different standards. What is also important if you move into the future of this business is that because of all these changes, the online food distribution trend, digitalization will accelerate, and especially in Asia, with all that link with online smartphones, there is a big opportunity. And there are a lot of new technologies that come into the market: smart farming, big data, online, genomics, blockchain, robotics, and it all matches, I would say. So it really can be very well combined with a digital value chain, with online food distribution. So I expect in the coming years, you are going to integrate, this is going to be integrated. You go to online applications where beside the traditional financial, technical performance and quality guarantees, also the health, welfare, environmental impact will be integrated. So you go to this sort of solutions, and probably also driven from the market side. And early adapters, I would say they are relatively well positioned. And it gives a lot of opportunities also for marketing. And again, with all these people focusing on online, on smartphone, using apps, a lot of opportunities as well. It means you can create a much closer link between the customer and the farmer. You can do the value chain tracking, personalized advertisements on social media, use social media to inspire, meal planners, DNA-based food choices, personalized food advertisements. So it creates a lot of opportunities. And this is definitely something that already several of the leading players are doing at the moment. So the early adapters, they are, I think, well positioned to benefit from this situation. So really, it creates a very digital value chain. It's going to be probably one of the big changes for the next decade. So changing society, changing markets, distribution, technical innovation, changing standards, and also more internationalization. And all these tools, left-hand side, preferred suppliership with platforms, digital standards, online marketing, product development, blockchain, big data, production, procurement is essential. So in conclusion, I want to say that poultry is worldwide the most bullish protein. We've seen the growth, 23%, 25% for the next decade. Asia is the world's fastest growing poultry market. Industry will focus much more on value added. Alternative proteins will grow, but come from a low base. Value chains online will accelerate, will create the digitalization of the value chain, social concepts expanding. Remote working is going to be there. It's going to change distribution, new technology adaptation, smart farming, blockchain, digitalization. And if you look to production, actually you can expect that relatively a lot will be produced in your region, even more than the growth of the market. So we go from global to local. 80 million tons in Asia, big opportunity, greenfields. You get a more international industry, Asian companies overseas, and the other way around, Western companies coming to Asia. And value added is an important factor there actually, and with also increasing opportunities for exports in the longer term. Thanks for your attention.
Great, thank you so much, Nan-Dirk. And I would now like to open the Q&A segment. Hello to you, to Utrecht. How are you? Good morning.
Hi, good morning. I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Really insightful presentation. And I guess we all look at digital value chains, I think, throughout the whole 2 days now and beyond. I think one key aspect that this viewer would like to learn is about marketing investment. So you mentioned a lot of different aspects to highlight you in marketing, like antibiotic-free products, cage-free, social issues, better chicken standards, slow-growing chicken, etc. So out of all the things that you mentioned, where do you spend, or where should you spend your marketing budget best? What should be the messaging there in order to really achieve a better outcome, better sale out of it?
I think the big challenge there is to really differentiate. You have to go out of bulk. So companies in the business, I would say, they have to differentiate their business model and also try to capture value. So from that perspective, I can see several opportunities there. So on one side, I think there are rising opportunities for these concepts, like I mentioned, with slower growing, with local appetite, antibiotic-free, all these concepts. So that's definitely going to be a growing market, especially also in the urban areas in Asia. Mm-hmm. Beside that, it's also a lot about innovation, new product development, creating value. You know, like I showed as well, the chicken sandwich developments in the US, new chicken products, so also that sort of innovations, I think, is important. So we see among the bigger players in this business also a rising focus on further processing and developed brands. In some of the South Asian and Asian countries, I think that's a very good moment to develop brands, because you don't have the power of supermarkets like you have in Western Europe or in the US, where the supermarkets want to develop their own private labels actually. So correct, I think it's a good timing to launch brands there actually. And beside that, the third one, which is important, is alternative proteins. You see also companies now investing in alternative proteins, build up a position there, and also they benefit from the relative bullish development. So it's, I think, a combination between new product, value-added poultry concepts, and maybe for some companies as well, the alternative proteins actually develop that position as well.
That position as well. Okay. Yeah, I think it's an exciting time in that area, not only because of, I mean, the disruption is pretty immense and there's a lot of opportunity though, regardless. We have one question that pertains procurement. So if you are a buyer, so what are the best practices you can advise on? And I think it relates to some of the things you said before, when you make a decision on procurement in this current environment. So since there's a lot of movement, a lot of changes in terms of how you market, you brand your products. So what should you look out for when purchasing your products or bringing them on board?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because you know, we are in a very volatile global market at the moment. You know, with ASF, with disease, avian influenza in poultry, the high feed prices, volatile feed prices, and also the disruptions of COVID, of course, in markets. So it is not an easy time, I would say, for people at the procurement side of the business.
Yes.
Yeah, from that perspective, probably the best thing is at one side a very good understanding of the market, so know which products are needed, and constant fine-tuning of the demand side to the procurement side. And at the procurement side, be relative flexible in your sourcing. So have lines with several options in the market to be able to shift very quick. Also with the issues with logistics, container transport are also disrupted, of course. So you need to have more options in the market. So be active in several sourcing streams. If you are global procuring, yeah, probably you need to be in, if you look for poultry, you have to be importing from maybe Thailand, China, if possible, for processed, and for Brazil, US for fresh, actually. So and then play a little bit with the changes in conditions, market prices, maybe disruptions in the chain. So I think flexibility is very important there.
Is very key, absolutely. I would like to thank you at this stage. Very, very insightful for all the presentations. Anybody that's viewing and would like to have a copy of Nandirk Mulder's presentation, he can reach out to him on the platform. And equally, this recording will also be available later on demand. So thank you so much to Utrecht again. I hope you have
very much.
A nice morning. All the best to you.
Thank you.
And we'll be back shortly with the presentation by the German Pavilion, who's going to show you basically what German products are all about. Thank you so much.